The first sign was the laughter, sharp, chaotic, like recess let out too early. Then came the stampede of small feet thundering up my front steps. I opened the door, and there they were, my younger brother Zach, his wife Vanessa, their 3 kids, and my parents, Diane and Alan, standing uninvited, all grinning like they'd just come home from church, and this was their house. Zach pushed his sunglasses up and looked around the porch like he was doing a home inspection. Noah, the oldest, had his face squished against my living room window, fogging up the glass with each breath. Vanessa stood off to the side, holding their youngest, a baby, wrapped in a yellow blanket, and giving me that tight, polite smile she always used when she was pretending we were friends. I never gave them my new address. Not one of them had ever set foot in this neighborhood, let alone my home. I didn't bother asking how they found me. Vanessa always had a talent for sniffing out what wasn't hers. Diane walked right in without so much as a pause. "Well, look at this," she said. "Noelle, I suppose teaching really paid off for you." It didn't sound like a compliment. It sounded like she was checking off a list. Alan trailed behind, nodding like background noise. Zach brushed past me like I was the doorframe, not the homeowner. The kids scattered instantly, their eyes sweeping the hall like they were on a real estate hunt. Vanessa stepped in last, gently bouncing the baby while locking eyes with me like she already knew the answer to a question I hadn't asked. "It's beautiful," she said with that smile too sweet to trust. "Bigger than I expected." That was the moment I knew this wasn't a visit. This was a plan. And somehow, I was the only one who hadn't been told. This wasn't new. It just hadn't happened in my house before. Back then, Zach ruled the living room like it came with his birth certificate. 3 years younger than me, but always louder, always messier, always forgiven. He once whipped the remote at my head and cracked it open. I got scolded for raising my voice. Diane said I was dramatic. Alan did what he always did. Stared out the window like he didn't have ears. When I turned 11, I started doing the laundry. At 13, I packed his lunches and left his backpack by the door so he wouldn't forget, because if he did, I got blamed. If I skipped it once, Diane said I wasn't pulling my weight for the family. Zach got a brand new Nintendo at 8. I got a small cupcake and a card that said, "Love, all of us." No one even bothered to sign it. He was the golden child. They didn't even try to hide it. Diane showed him off like a prize ribbon. "Zach, our little athlete." Then she'd wave at me. "That's Noelle. She's into teaching stuff." When I nailed my first A in advanced calculus, it barely got a glance. Zach got a C in biology and we had ice cream for trying hard. By 15, Zach had already accidentally shoved me down the stairs. I wore long sleeves for a week so no one would see the bruise. Diane pulled me aside before Thanksgiving and said, "If Grandma asks, you say nothing. Don't start drama." "We can't risk Zach's future over this," she said like I was a scandal waiting to happen. After that, I stopped asking. No prom dress, no rides, no help. I walked to study group in the rain more than once. I'd stay in the school library after hours. The janitor knew me by name and let me sit in the corner when my feet hurt too much to walk home. At 17, the night I left, I threw a hoodie, 3 notebooks, and a phone charger into a backpack and slipped out while the house was asleep. I had $200 stashed in an old coffee tin and a bus schedule I'd printed at the school library. Diane told me, "Don't bother coming back until you've got real direction." I was still a senior, but direction wasn't the issue. The problem was simple. I wasn't useful to them anymore. I couch surfed through senior year, turned in every assignment, graduated on time. No one from my family showed. Not even a text. I told myself that clean breaks heal faster. I wanted to believe that. After that, no more holidays, no fireworks, no stockings. If they noticed I was gone, they never said. Maybe silence made dinner more comfortable. Zach married at 22. I found out on Facebook. Maddie beamed in lace, and Zach stood beside her like he'd never once left a bruise on anyone. One kid came, then another, fast and neat, like a life checked off a list. By then, they'd already moved back in with Diane and Alan. Child care logistics, they called it. Diane played the doting matriarch, sharing photos like a brand campaign, 3 generations, and not one picture of me. From then on, I was what they called me behind closed doors. The one who left. The one who didn't understand what family meant. The one who made her own bed so let her lie in it. I had for years. But it wasn't a bed I was worried about anymore. But what I feared most wasn't the bed. It was what it stood on. And in the spring of 2020, that foundation crumbled. The world closed shop, and so did my lease. My job as a substitute teacher was gone in a flash. Schools shut down, contracts canceled. I'd been tutoring and working part-time at a local middle school. No benefits, no backup plan. There was no warning, just a system-wide email and a final check that barely covered groceries. My roommate lasted another 2 weeks before she packed up for her parents' lake house in Michigan. I didn't have that card to play. The place we'd rented was too steep for me to handle solo. I sold everything that had weight, furniture, lamps, even a full-length mirror that had seen me through college, just to stay afloat that final month. Then came the nights I wasn't indoors anymore. At some point, comfort stopped being a priority. Survival took over. What I did have was my rusted-out silver Ford, scarred like me, with more dents than working parts, and a second-hand camper I'd bought 3 years back for $1,200, on impulse, back when I thought I'd take solo road trips someday. I once dreamed I'd camp under the stars. I never even made it to a state park. Instead, I scrubbed it down, bolted it in place, and made it mine. A foam mattress, tiny fridge, 1 bin of hand-washed clothes. Not cozy, but mine. My first night was behind a strip mall, wedged between a dumpster and a busted lamppost. The streetlight blinked like a dying signal. Teenagers rolled by on skateboards past midnight. One threw a Sprite can at my bumper. I didn't sleep. I pressed my hands to the thin wall and listened, for footsteps, for keys, for anything. The next day, I did something I swore I'd never do again. I called my parents, told them the truth. No job, no lease, just needed a place to park. A driveway even. Diane didn't even hesitate. "That's not an option," she said. "We've got the little ones here. The house is tight as it is." Zach grabbed the phone. "You can park here," he said, "but it's gonna cost you." Then he named a rent that could have gotten me a real apartment on the west side. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just hung up. After that, I lived like a shadow. Grocery store lots, forgotten warehouse driveways, alleys near the riverbank. I'd charge my phone behind laundromats, used a cheap solar panel on good days, rationed power like oxygen. My showers were either at the gym or with wet wipes in a gas station restroom at 3 a.m. My mail went to a friend's apartment. I ate cold soup from the can more times than I want to admit. One humid July night, the mini fridge died in its sleep, taking every bite of food with it. When I landed a warehouse gig 2 towns over, I volunteered for the graveyard shift. No traffic. I slept in the back lot, less likely to be noticed. The manager never asked questions. "You're on time," he said once, shrugging. More than I can say for half the crew. He even let me run an extension cord to a spare outlet. Told me I could unhook the camper and drive the truck if I needed space. It wasn't home, but it was something close to safe. And after a year of holding my breath, that felt like a gift. 2 winters came and went. I didn't call, didn't update, didn't ask them to care, and they didn't. 3 weeks after I posted a picture of my porch, just the steps, my hand holding the keys. No caption, just one word, home. I didn't tag the location, didn't send the address to anyone. But one evening after I'd re-leveled the camper in the backyard, out of habit, maybe superstition, I heard a knock, then another. Then the door opened without waiting for me. They came in like it was a Sunday open house. Diane led the charge, holding a Tupperware full of something mushy. "We brought you dinner," she said, like that made up for years. Vanessa floated in behind her, baby in tow, eyes moving from wall to wall like she was mentally redecorating. Zach came in last, pointing at the ceilings like he already saw a renovation budget. The kids darted past Zach, already claiming imaginary rooms. Alan hovered near the door, clutching his jacket like someone unsure if this was a stop or a stay. "This is beautiful, Noelle," Diane said, her tone just warm enough to sting. "You've done well, for someone on her own." I didn't respond. Some comments don't deserve replies. Vanessa was already floating through the place, murmuring about the layout. 3 bedrooms? Wow, so spacious. Honestly, kind of too much for one person, don't you think? Zach kept quiet, but his eyes scanned everything. Walls, corners, light fixtures. "Huh, closer to my job than I thought," he said, almost like a realtor mulling over market value. I stood in the hall, spine pressed to drywall, just watching. The floor still groaned. The paint was plain. The pictures were still boxed. But this was mine. No one asked for a tour. No one asked if they could come in. They moved like ownership was assumed. When Zach finally turned, hands in pockets, he said with a casual shrug, "Got a sec?" Like we were co-workers about to discuss office supplies. The others slipped out like they'd rehearsed it. Diane wrangled the kids. Vanessa rocked the baby, humming something too calm. Alan glanced at me once, then looked away. I followed Zach into the kitchen. He leaned back against the counter like he'd already memorized where the coffee mugs were. "This place," he said, eyes flicking up to the ceiling. "It's really something. But come on. It's a lot for just you, don't you think?" He gave me this look like we both already knew the answer. "You've got the camper. You've lived light before. Maddie's pregnant again. And this place? 15 minutes from my office." I didn't say a word, so he kept going. I was thinking, Maddie and I, the kids, we could move in here, just until we get settled. You could use the camper again. You're used to it, right? He grinned, like he'd already made the announcement, like the decision had been communal, everyone but me. And I stayed silent, because somewhere deep down, I always knew this day would come. I just didn't think they'd break the door down to do it. 3 long days passed without a word. They'd left that night with forced smiles and too many backward glances. I didn't hear a thing after. Then Friday. I pulled into the driveway a little after 6. My hands were full, takeout, keys. But the moving truck hit me before the porch light did. It was backed right up to my porch like it belonged there. Zach's van was tucked beside it. The front door gaped open. Boxes spilled into the hall, toys already scattered like landmines. From the curb I heard the TV, cartoons blasting like they owned the airspace. Zach came out holding a lamp. Saw me. Didn't flinch. Just nodded like I was crashing their moving day. Vanessa followed, baby in arms, beaming. "It's really happening," she said, syrupy sweet. "We're just so grateful you're letting us stay." She turned and walked inside like my silence meant approval. I didn't follow. I walked to my truck, locked the doors, and dialed 911. As it rang, I cracked the window, pulled in cold air like it was courage. Then Vanessa was there. Tap, tap on the glass. Her fingernail sharp against the silence. "You don't have to do this," she said, soft and manipulative. "Just let it happen. It's better for the kids." Then quieter, leaning closer. "Your mom said it's fine, and you always listen to her, don't you?" The operator answered. I gave my name, my address, said the words I never thought I'd say out loud. "My home is being taken. I didn't give permission." When the officers showed up, Vanessa flashed her warmest fake smile. Zach stayed inside, pretending to fiddle with crib parts he hadn't even unpacked yet. I calmly walked the officers through it. License, deed, everything. Then I showed them the lock, drilled clean through, and the old brass knob lying in the dirt like garbage. The drill sat right there, still warm, still plugged in like it had nothing to hide. They knocked. Zach answered with a smug smile and a stack of papers. "We've got a lease," he said, like that fixed everything. I took the pages. My name was there. So was my signature, except it wasn't mine. I held it next to my license, let the officer compare. The handwriting was off. Even my middle name was misspelled. I turned to Zach. "This is forgery," I said. "It's also a felony." His mouth opened like he had a defense, then closed like he didn't. Behind him, Vanessa started up, talking over herself about children, the future, family. One officer lifted a hand. "Let's continue this outside." That's when they arrived. Diane, chin high, shoulders squared. Alan followed like a shadow, hands stuffed in his coat. Diane didn't hesitate. "My daughter gave them permission," she said like she was reading from a script. I didn't look at her, just passed the forged lease to the officer. "This isn't a misunderstanding. It's a felony. And if one more person steps inside like they live here, I'll press charges." Vanessa snapped first. She tore the lease in half, then quarters, then ripped it into a flutter of legal confetti and let it rain over the porch. A breeze took some into the grass. The officer told her flatly, "Pick it up." Zach stayed silent. Diane didn't cry. She just stared me down, jaw tight. "You're being cruel," she said. I met her stare and said, "No. I'm being clear." The officers told them to leave, firm, final, and for once they did. No shouting, no last-minute speeches, but I knew it wasn't over. People like them don't shut doors. They leave them cracked, just wide enough to sneak back in. Christmas Eve brought cold rain and cinnamon in the air. My aunt's pie baking just like childhood. I'd invited 10 people. Half were cousins I hadn't seen since high school. The rest were from out of state. Some drove 3 hours. They brought folding chairs, crock pots, scratched CDs. Uncle Don came in carrying a CD labeled Ray Charles Christmas. "Can't have a proper holiday without it," he said. We laughed louder than I thought we would. Nobody asked about Diane. Nobody mentioned Zach. They'd read my post when I still had my socials open. Not one of them questioned it. Around 8, the front door creaked open. I hadn't invited them, didn't even share the party time, but there they were. Diane led, holding grocery store cookies like they were peace offerings. Alan behind her, stiff as ever. Zach came in hands up like this was a truce. Vanessa brought no baby this time, just perfume and her patented pout. "Merry Christmas," they chorused, like they still owned the holiday. The room froze. The music cut. My cousin Lauren stood slowly, arms folded. Uncle Don looked at me, waiting. I didn't move, didn't speak. So Don turned to Diane. "You weren't invited," he said, steady. Diane smiled like it was nothing. "We came to make amends." Don didn't budge. "Number you came to be seen." "That's not the same thing." Silence held. Vanessa started in, about space, the kids, how they didn't mean to cause trouble. Her voice pitched higher until even she couldn't track it. Then the crying started. She dropped into a chair, hands to her face, sobbing so loud I swear the baby could have heard from the next county. "It's not fair," she sobbed. "We have 4 kids. 4. And she has all this. For what?" I stood still, arms slack. Vanessa looked up, smeared in mascara. "You don't even have a family, Noelle." "We do." Behind her, Zach found something very interesting in the carpet. Diane looked ready to speak, but my aunt got there first. "You had a family," my aunt said sharply to Diane. "You had 2 children, but you erased one." Diane blinked. "You erased her," my aunt repeated. "She needed you, and you laughed. Now that she's fine, you bring cookies?" No one spoke. Zach shifted like maybe he would, but Dawn cut in. "You didn't just show up, you tried to steal her house." "That's not a misunderstanding," Dawn said, voice calm but sharp. "That's theft." Then a voice I hadn't heard all evening, my grandmother's, floated in from the hallway. quiet but solid. I saw the lease, I saw the broken lock, and I saw the family pictures from all the years you left her out. She turned to me then, eyes steady. You don't owe them forgiveness. I gave a single nod. That was enough. No shouting, no exit slammed. Just silence so dense it pressed against the walls. Diane was first to break. She set the untouched cookies on the counter and stepped back like they might explode. Vanessa followed, wiping her face. Zach didn't meet my eyes. Alan hung back the longest. "Merry Christmas," he said finally, but it landed flat. No one responded, no one invited them back. And this time, they didn't try. The door shut gently. The music started again, tentative, like the house itself had to relearn how to be warm. Someone restarted Ray Charles. The lights gave a little flicker. The heater kicked in with a hum. No one brought it up. Plates were passed, napkins refolded, like healing disguised itself as dinner. My friend Sarah refilled wine glasses like we hadn't just watched a full-blown emotional eviction. Later, I stepped out into the cold, wrapped in a thick blanket. The yard had gone still, peaceful. A couple of cousins had called dibs on sleeping bags in the camper, curious to step into my old life. One of them said it felt like summer camp when they were little. He meant it sweetly. I stayed out on the porch, let the cold bite through the blanket, just enough to feel real. They had walked into my home smiling, like they hadn't once tried to steal it out from under me. They left behind their cookies and crocodile tears, and not a single apology. Maybe they never would. People like them don't believe in consequences, just inconveniences. And being told no? That's the only thing they truly can't stomach. Inside, someone laughed. I heard forks clink, kids giggling as they stole seconds. The kind of warm, ordinary noise I never heard growing up, unless it was Zach's birthday. I didn't go back in right away. I just stood there, holding the blanket tight, and whispered it to the dark. I was there. They just didn't see me. Christmas morning came soft and slow. The scent of cinnamon and coffee drifted through the rooms. Someone had started a second pot already. I stepped around folded blankets, lipstick-stained glasses, and a half-eaten slice of pie. The kind of mess that says, "This place is safe." Outside, frost covered the truck windshield. The camper sat past the fence, silver and still in the cold. One cousin had spent the night out there. She left the curtain half drawn. I could see the quilt folded just right on the bench. Respectful. I walked the side yard, ran my hand along that old metal skin. I'd once cried in there, whispered through gritted teeth that I'd never beg again. And I didn't. I passed the patch of grass where Zach had parked the truck. The tire marks still etched in yellow. One lone zip tie lay in the dirt, probably from a box he was never going to open anyway. Nothing was stolen, nothing broken, just a scheme that didn't work. Before heading back inside, I stopped on the porch. The front light was still on. I'd forgotten to switch it off. They used to say I didn't have a family, but last night, 10 people shared my table, scrubbed dishes, laughed over stories. No tears in the hallway, no yelling, no eviction threats. I stood at the threshold, then reached up and flipped the porch light off. No more need to leave it on. Not for them. Not ever again.